Trump administration is sweeping a lead poisoning crisis under the rug. Watch this report for more.
Like most busy moms, Kat Cesar, mother of 6-year-old twins, is stretched thin.
Let's put that in your backpack too.
Now adding to that stress, concerns about lead at her kids' Milwaukee school building. Her kids, among the 68,000 in Milwaukee's public schools that may have been exposed to lead in paint and dust in deteriorating buildings. District-wide testing this year uncovering 4 confirmed cases of lead poisoning.
Officials say 106 out of the district's 156 buildings need to be repainted and inspected.
Ingesting lead paint is especially dangerous for young children and can cause growth delays, attention disorders, and even brain damage. Further complicating things, recent Trump administration cuts to nationwide health programs, including the dismissal of a CDC team of lead experts.
We rely on the federal government for that expertise, so to see that eliminated overnight was hard to describe, to say the least.
So here you have this situation happening in a certain region of the country, but surely duplicated elsewhere. You know it is, okay? This is just the latest example. And by the way, lead poisoning, you saw the young boy there, and we just covered a story on a clinic bombing and a young man who seemed like he was not himself, according to his father. Lead poisoning, not suggesting the bomber had it, it leads to traumatic brain injury, as you saw there. Also, mental health issues. Okay, depression, panic, it's all scientific. Again, nothing happens in isolation. So let's give you the details here. This crisis has struck the city of Milwaukee. It has forced 4 schools to close. Started earlier this year, as the report indicated, began on January 13th, when Milwaukee first notified parents at one grade 3 to 5 school that a child had tested positive for high levels of lead in their blood. Local health officials determined lead exposure did not occur at the child's home, which, left their school as the obvious culprit, where children spend most of their childhood. City investigators found chipped lead paint, lead-laden dust throughout the school building. Press and government reports indicate that the school district has struggled to keep up with the paint maintenance requests due to a lack of funding and manpower. Again, nothing happens in isolation. Part of a community. 125 out of 150 of the city's schools were built before 1978. And why is that significant? Because that is when lead paint was banned. Lead can lead to major development problems. Now been detected in at least 9 public schools. At least 4 students have tested positive for high lead levels in their blood. So far, no children have been hospitalized for acute lead poisoning, which can be life-threatening. But the affected kids continue to be monitored. By who? Last I saw, the parents needed to check their own kids, test their own kids. Government getting out of collective well-being business. Lead can lead to these major problems, of course. Several buildings have been temporarily closed so workers can do a deep clean. Milwaukee has been inspecting all of its public schools for lead with the goal of completing the review by September. Now, if this happens, cities can request federal help from the CDC. When this was first detected in January, the Biden administration was in quick contact with Milwaukee officials. Visit was planned from the CDC for April, but that all halted when Donald Trump assumed the presidency. Early April, Trump administration denied Milwaukee's request for support because there was no longer anybody on the government's payroll who could provide the lead poisoning expertise the city needs. Just like that. Can't help you. Vox filling in some of the details for us. Now, because that team got let go in the Trump Doge purge, a lot of waste. April 1st, lead exposure team within the CDC's National Center for the Environmental Health was laid off as part of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s massive restructuring of the federal health department. April Fools. The planned trip was canceled. No federal officials have stepped foot in Milwaukee since to aid in their response. Well, it's very dangerous to be in these buildings, so they probably didn't want to risk it, maybe. It's just a theory. Milwaukee's attempting to fix it on their own, but it likely won't be possible. City reported May 13th that it had replaced 10,000 lead water service lines in an attempt to remove another possible source of exposure for local children. But they still have 55,000 more left to go. And local officials have said they would need state or federal funding to finish the job. It is estimated to cost the city about $630 million. Now Milwaukee's experience may become all too common. What in the past might have been a national scandal could become routine. Meanwhile, multiple health crises are happening right now. Small tuberculosis outbreak in Kansas. A Florida town experienced the unexpected spread of hepatitis last December. 12 people have been hospitalized in a listeria outbreak. The US is currently facing its largest outbreak of measles in decades. On and on and on. Other pockets of the country, HIV infections skyrocketing. What is going on? Well, when the government stops working for the people, actively working against them, it would seem, this could be the result. We'll help you. Nope, sorry, nothing to see here. We got rid of people on April 1st. The joke's on you. I would argue, yes, that this is even a national security issue. This is a national security issue for America. Surely there are other schools throughout the country that have these same situations going on, where you have students going to school in places that are unfit, that are literally poisoning them. And what does that do to our population? What does that leave us with as we compete with the rest of the world and try to protect ourselves? This is sick, but not surprising, at least to me.
Yeah, what it does is it damages generations of people in this country, right? An entire generation of children is going to grow up with these health concerns that they would not have otherwise had to grow up with. And so even though this administration has only been in power for, a few months, not counting Trump's first administration, the damage that they can do is so long lasting, right? So many people can become negatively impacted just from these few months and what's happening, because a lot of what they're doing is going to be very difficult to undo, because it's not just the legislation and the executive orders that they're doing. It's all of the propaganda that surrounds it. It's the mentality that they're pushing as, they attempt to justify everything that they're doing to our citizens, to our children. And anytime education is messed with, it hurts my heart, because it really is doing such a disservice to these children who don't have a say, who don't know what's going on, but they're gonna grow up having less than previous generations were had at their age. So, whenever you read the headline, I actually started laughing because the story is so ridiculous. Like, of course, the Trump administration is allowing lead poisoning in schools now. They're selling off our national parks. They're putting chemicals back into our water. They're demonizing vaccines. They're trying to bring back coal. What's next? Like, they're gonna bring back asbestos. So the government has made it clear that all they care about is making money, not for the country, but for themselves. And while most of that is directed at Trump and his administration, let's not pretend that the Democrats, plenty of Democrats, can't be included in that statement. So what do? They defund our programs, the programs that millions of Americans, including rich Americans, by the way, rely on to keep them safe and protected and healthy, because the people who are defunding it, somehow they're making money off of it. All of that money that they're taking from things like public education are going elsewhere. And it's not the places that we want them to go. We want it in our schools. We want it in, the National Weather Service, which I know we're going to talk about in a little bit. But all of this comes down to funding. And if you defund or dismantle the Department of Education, then you simply aren't funding protections for the children. You're not interested in spending the money or resources on addressing things like lead poisoning, which includes, conducting lead testing and replacing and repairing old infrastructure and then maintaining those structures, et cetera. It's all very expensive, but it is incredibly necessary. And if we don't do it, then an entire generation of children are going to suffer potentially for the rest of their lives from the health issues. So this mentality comes down to the American tendency to value individualism over collectivism. We've seen in studies that collectivist societies have happier and healthier citizens. But here in the United States, we have a very individualized society, almost as a point of pride. But the problem with that is that if the government says, look, all these things are your personal individual responsibility, then it relieves them of any responsibility or obligation to actually do their jobs and provide, protections and services for the American people. They say, you know what, that's your personal problem. So don't come to me looking for anything. We're going to take this money and put it into the military or put it wherever they're putting it. And you know what? You guys deal with the lead poisoning on your own. Just go to the doctor. But also, there is no nationally funded healthcare system.
And so you said a couple of things that I want to touch upon. Okay. It absolves them, the government, of their responsibility. Does it? They may think it does, but here's why that's really dumb. It's just dumb. I actually hung up on my Republican friend a couple minutes before the show, which I enjoy doing, because we were bickering over what intelligence is, as he was pointing out that he believed Donald Trump is quite bright. And I was pointing out that discipline, emotional intelligence, is all part of it. Here's why it's dumb. You said your heart was breaking aspects of this story, leaving children who deserve an education and a chance for the future in the lurch, leaving them unhealthy and damaged, perhaps permanently. But you have a heart to break. If you don't have one of those, it's still an incredibly short-sighted, stupid idea, because you can only go so far before you're going to have to deal with people one way or the other. You're either going to get rid of the lead, pay on the front end, perhaps. We'll call this the front end, but it's been in the making for a long time. Or you're going to pay another way. A lack of resources, a lack of a stable, budding youth population, more healthcare costs. People are still going to get healthcare. It's not great, but they're going to go to the hospitals, emergency, or whatever they got to do. You're going to pay one way or the other. And you're right to mention all administrations, everybody, right? Across the aisle, whatever. Because I don't believe for a second that this was just recently discovered. And when the parents got the letters, well, who knows how long the school districts knew. Just my personal spidey sense, journalistic, investigative sense. But this is a horrific, horrific thing. And all the safeguards have been removed. CDC, you've got this strange man who enjoys taking his shirt off, but doesn't eat McDonald's. His last name's Kennedy. Okay. And where do we go from here as a society? It would be great if you were just like, I don't know, I say Alaska, you're still subjected to rules, but if you were living on the frontier, living off the land, and nobody could get to you, you've got to work together with just your family unit, put the boat away. I've been watching this reality show, and they've got to put the boat away. The boat could be ripped to shreds once things turn to ice and all this other stuff. They're hunting elk and the like. But most of us rely on other people, even for the air we breathe to not be polluted, the schools, all of it. So we can keep being stupid, but we're all going to pay in the end, not just your broken heart. I'll give you the last word before we move on to
I think I touched on that idea briefly, or I meant to, when I said that this affects all Americans, including the wealthy Americans. This is the America that we're all going to have to live in, right? Whatever they're building, this is all of our home, right? We all have to share it. So it's like, what kind of people do you want to live with? Do you want to live with uneducated, unhealthy people? People love to complain that unhealthy people are already a strain on our healthcare system. And it's like, well, we have to help them not be unhealthy, right? We have to build some kind of society that is walkable, Sharon, and that has healthy food in the grocery stores and things like that, gives them access to farmers markets and all that good stuff, right? You can only isolate yourselves in a gated community so much, right? And you can only pretend that the outside world isn't encroaching upon you so much. But it's kind of like Batman. Like, he had his dark, sad mansion. No hate, it was a gorgeous mansion, but it was just him in there with his butler, right? So it's kind of dark, kind of sad, and he just stays locked up in there. And then he looks around and says, "Oh, look at Gotham. It's such a," I was gonna cuss. It's such a terrible place, right? It's such a It's so grungy. It's so dirty. There's so much crime everywhere. All these low life people who are just wanting to, commit crimes and steal from people.
Yep.
And so instead of just like giving back to that community and helping to elevate the whole thing, he just hoards it all and stays locked up and pretends like this is some other problem that he is definitely not a part of, which simply is not true.
Yeah. Was there gold? I forget. Is Gotham lined with tacky gold? And Batman didn't have a wife who wore a jacket that said, "I really don't care, do you?" I'm just asking. I get my stuff mixed up and I don't always remember.
It's on the back of one of his capes, yeah.
Oh, is it? I don't really care, do you? Look, believe it or not, there is no real Beyond the Gates. Tacky Gates, Gold Gates. Although I have been watching that new soap opera. It's my escape and I like it. Look it up if you choose.